After waiting all weekend, the peace talks between the US and Iran still haven't produced any results. We'll have to wait a few more days. Meanwhile, doubts are mounting, and Trump has issued a strong response. But what exactly is he responding to? And then, this morning at 8:23, Trump pulled a surprise move, a real game changer. What exactly did he do? That's the main topic I want to bring you today. Also, today is Memorial Day in the United States. It's the last Monday of May every year. This Memorial Day has been observed since the American Civil War, so it's been going on for 160 years now, right? Okay, so from this, you can really see America's uniqueness, or what makes America unique, by looking at how Americans celebrate this holiday. All right, welcome to Good Morning America, brought to you by Fanway. Hello to all our YouTube viewers and to our listeners on Sound of Hope, Silicon Valley FM 96.1. Hi everyone, sorry, my show seems to be getting later and later these days. From now on, I really want to get the show back to airing at 11:15 Eastern Time. I'm saying this publicly to hold myself accountable, all right? If you enjoy in-depth news analysis with context, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Fangway Time, right now. That way, you'll be the first to get notified whenever the news is updated each day. And to all our longtime friends, please share our show so more Chinese-speaking friends can learn about what's really happening behind the news. The news I'm bringing you today is a perfect example of this. It's exactly what I mean. All right, let's get into it. First, let's talk about the first topic. Last weekend, President Trump secluded himself in the White House for 2 days and 3 nights. Starting Friday night, he didn't meet with any guests, didn't see the media, and didn't go out. He stayed in the White House to decide on matters of war and peace between the United States and Iran. During that time, he negotiated with Iran and held phone calls and conference calls with leaders of Gulf countries. He also spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Basically, he was determined to come up with a solution, setting aside time specifically for this. But at the same time, within Trump's Republican camp, there was a lot of suspicion and concern. People were worried that Trump might go soft. They were worried he might give up on demanding that Iran abandon its nuclear program, and also concerned about giving money to Iran. There was this fear that Trump would get played by Iran and end up just like Obama. Secondly, and I'm really not exaggerating here, this is exactly how it was. Trump's most important ally dropped some major news over the weekend. Some really big news came out. One was from Texas Senator Ted Cruz. He tweeted, basically saying, well, I won't read the whole thing because it's too long, but to sum it up, if the final result is still an Iranian regime ruled by Islamist leaders who are shouting anti-American slogans, then now giving them tens of billions of dollars so they can keep enriching uranium and developing nuclear weapons. At the same time, if they can effectively control the Strait of Hormuz, then this outcome would be a catastrophic mistake. Now, Senator Graham, who is an ally of Trump and also the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, tweeted that if the deal with Iran allows this regime to survive and grow stronger over time, then we would basically be pouring fuel on the fire in the conflicts in Lebanon and Iraq. If the agreement allows Iran to survive and, in the future, have the ability to control the strait, it will empower Hezbollah in Lebanon and strengthen Iran's influence there. Local forces, as well as making the Shia militias in Iraq stronger than ever. Former U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo also tweeted that the agreement being discussed with Iran looks like the same old script, bribing the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to let them build weapons of mass destruction and intimidate the world. This is absolutely not putting America first. The matter should be simple. Just open up the strait. So cut off Iran's funding and destroy their capabilities so they can never again threaten our allies. Wow, that last point really infuriated Stephen Chung, a senior advisor at the White House. He fired back at Pompeo on X, tweeting, "What nonsense are you talking about? Do you even know what kind of agreement we're discussing? If you don't understand, just keep your mouth shut and let the professionals handle it." And I'm being polite here. He actually used profanity in his tweet. So the White House was really furious about all these doubts and suspicions. Then this morning, Trump tweeted saying, "When I see those asterisks, I just have to laugh. They have no idea about the negotiations I'm having with Iran." He said, just like the outgoing Senator Tom Tillis, he's a Republican senator from North Carolina, because he opposed Trump, in the end, he knew he couldn't get reelected, so he decided not to run for reelection himself. And then there's the congressman from Kentucky who just suffered a crushing defeat in the primaries, named Bill Cassidy. Actually, sorry, I meant Thomas Massey, and also Bill Cassidy, who just lost badly in the primaries. These people who are completely lost always support bad policies and terrible candidates, yet they keep criticizing every one of my brilliant victories. He said these people should just go home and take a break. They only create division and failure, and they themselves are losers. As for negotiations with Iran, it should either be a great and meaningful agreement or not signed at all. It will be the complete opposite of the disastrous deal negotiated by the Obama administration. He said that deal basically opened the door for Iran to get nuclear weapons, and he would never sign an agreement like that. As you all know, even though Ted Cruz, as well as Lindsey Ingram, and also Pompeo, who I just mentioned, have all voiced these doubts, Trump didn't directly insult them. Trump didn't curse at them. Trump didn't insult them. Instead, he criticized those former officials who are no longer in power, the ones I just mentioned. In other words, he used some pretty harsh words, basically criticizing them indirectly. By insulting those people, what he really meant was to tell Ted Cruz and Graham, stop being so suspicious and stop saying those things. I'm not going to sign that kind of agreement. That's basically what he meant. All right, now that we've talked about this, let me share my thoughts. This whole situation is honestly very, how should I put it? First of all, there's clearly no need to worry that Trump will take an appeasement approach or that he'll go easy on Iran. He's not going to let Iran off the hook. Trump definitely won't go easy on them. Basically, these two tweets, there were two tweets this morning, this is one of them, and I'll talk about the next one in a bit, have already made it clear that President Trump won't go easy on Iran. He's not going to pay off Iran to buy them off. And as for that White House official, last night they told the media that the president's guiding principle is no dust, no dollars. What does that mean? Dust refers to nuclear waste, so basically hand over the nuclear waste and not a single dollar will be given. That's President Trump's guiding principle. But what exactly will Trump do? As for this agreement, last night it was said that they won't be able to sign it the next day or two. It'll probably take 5 to 7 days. So even after spending the whole weekend on it, nothing's been settled. And now we have to wait another 5 to 7 days. What will happen after those 5 to 7 days? What can Trump do? Honestly, if you ask me, it's really tough. Because the core and most difficult issue here is that Trump is demanding the other side completely give up nuclear weapons, while Iran absolutely refuses to give up its nuclear weapons. So how can the two sides negotiate when they're both choke at each other? You're blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Basically, you're choking the whole world. So Trump is choking Iran, and this kind of chokehold can be released. But what about the nuclear weapons? Iran might think, I've held out this long, and the other side can't do anything to me, so why should I hand over my nuclear materials? Nuclear materials are what will allow me to stand on equal footing with the West in the future. So the only way, as a regime in Iran that believes in doomsday, is to one day destroy the whole world and then rise again from the ashes. That's their only option. So what can they do in another 5 or 7 days, or even 50 or 70 days? What problems can really be solved? So this morning at 8:23, Trump pulled another surprise move. Let me read it to you. This tweet is really long, so I can't read the whole thing, but I'll share the main points. Trump said that negotiations with Iran are going smoothly, and that this will be a great deal that's beneficial to all parties. Otherwise, we simply won't sign, and we'll go back to the battlefield and fight even harder than ever before, stronger than ever, but nobody wants that. Now listen up, everyone. On Saturday, I spoke with 8 Arab countries. I said that after the United States has put in so much effort to solve such a huge problem, all these countries should at least sign the Abraham Accords at the same time. So what does that mean? It means recognizing Israel's existence and normalizing relations, right? To jointly create peace and prosperity in the Middle East. He said these countries should be ready to make this agreement with Iran an even more historically significant event. For the first time in 5,000 years, it would bring real power to the Middle East. Strength and peace. He said that Saudi Arabia and Qatar should take the lead in signing first, and then other countries should follow. If they don't sign, they shouldn't be allowed to participate in the negotiations for this agreement, because this would show that these countries have bad intentions. And then Trump went on to say that when he discussed this with the leaders of those countries, they said that once they signed the agreement, they would be honored to welcome Iran to join the Abraham Accords as well. Wow, that would be something truly special. Trump said this would be the most important agreement ever signed by these great nations that have long been in conflict. No past or future agreement could ever surpass it. That's why I made it mandatory. I demanded that all countries sign the Abraham Accords immediately. And if Iran and I, as President of the United States of America, also sign this agreement, Iran will have the honor of becoming part of this unparalleled world alliance. But Iran would also be joining this world alliance. Then Trump said that the Middle East would achieve unity, strength, and economic prosperity, possibly unmatched by any other region in the world. Through this Truth Social post, yes, this Truth Social post, I'm still quoting Trump here, I am instructing my representatives, meaning the representatives of the United States, to begin and successfully complete the process of bringing these countries in. The process of the Abraham Accords, which already holds historical significance. Thank you all for your attention to this matter. What does this mean? What does this mean? What is the meaning of this post? This is classic Trump negotiation style, what he calls the art of the deal. What does that mean? It means if a problem can't be solved, if you're stuck, what do? Move up, broaden the scope, expand your perspective. Shift the negotiation battlefield from the original place to a bigger stage, expand the objective. This way, the original conflict becomes smaller, even insignificant. This is classic Trump negotiation. It's being demonstrated on the world stage. What does that mean? It means taking this opportunity for the Arab world to make peace with Israel, mutually recognize each other and create prosperity together. Then, Iran, you can also join in and turn hostility with Israel into friendship. Instead of negotiating bit by bit, why not just unite the whole world as one family? The Middle East would become a land of beauty, and under America's leadership and assistance, we could all prosper together. That's Trump. In this tweet, he extends two olive branches, one to Saudi Arabia and the Arab countries led by Saudi Arabia, and the other olive branch is practically extended to his rival, his enemy, Iran, offering to pull them out of their own so-called hole. So not only would we not go to war, but overnight we could turn enemies into friends and help your country succeed. Do you dare? Do you dare to take that step? This is Trump's approach. Did y'all hear that? Isn't it wild? Isn't it true that only Trump would come up with such a bold move in a deadlocked, seemingly unsolvable negotiation? And at 8:25 in the morning, he just puts out a tweet. I bet it was him. He probably had a sudden flash of inspiration the night before, and then he just started tweeting. Tell me, what other country in the world operates like this? Will it work? Huh? Let's think about it. Will it work or not? Before we can answer that, we need to clarify what the Abraham Accords are, the historical significance behind them, and what makes them so clever. So what exactly are the Abraham Accords? Abraham was a figure from around 2000 BC, and he's described in great detail in the Old Testament of the Bible. He was a patriarch, a man of great moral character. Of course, from a historical perspective, he lived in the Middle East, in the Mesopotamian region, which is present-day Iraq. Now, the three major religions of the Middle East, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all regard him as the starting point of their faith. That's why these three religions are sometimes called the Abrahamic religions. According to historical records, Abraham was a Hebrew chieftain. His wife was named Sarah. Sarah had been infertile for many years and couldn't have children. According to local customs at the time, since they needed to solve the problem of having an heir, she gave her Egyptian maid, Hagar, to Abraham as a concubine. They hoped this would allow them to have a child. As a result, when Abraham was 86 years old, Hagar gave birth to a son named Ishmael. Then, 14 years later, when Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90, a miracle happened. This was recorded. Sarah became pregnant and gave birth to Isaac. That was their second son. So, Abraham had two sons, one from his original wife and one from his later concubine. After Sarah gave birth to Isaac, she saw that the older son, the big brother, was mocking his younger brother, so she asked Abraham to send Hagar and her son away. So what happened? Abraham had no choice but send them away. They left the place where Abraham's family lived and settled far away in a place called the wilderness of Paran. Although Abraham was heartbroken, God told him not to worry. God said that he would bless Ishmael and fulfill his promise to Abraham. Ishmael would become the father of 12 tribal leaders, and he would make him into a great nation. Later on, Ishmael came to be regarded as the ancestor of Muhammad's tribe, known as the Quraysh, the founders of that lineage. And as for Isaac, he is the ancestor of the Israelites. So the two sons each started their own lineage, right? And later on, both Islam and Judaism refer to him as Abraham, their common ancestor. In the book of Genesis in the Bible, it talks about Abraham taking his beloved son up to Mount Moriah, following God's command to offer his son as a sacrifice, to kill him and offer his blood to God. Actually, this was a test from God. He didn't really want Abraham to kill his son. At the very last moment, after Abraham had passed all the tests, God told him to stop and provided a ram as a sacrifice instead, sparing his son. As a result, both peoples consider themselves descendants of Abraham. Yeah, both peoples honor Abraham, but they're two different peoples in two different religions. Later on, the story splits. On the Israelite side, they say the son who was taken up the mountain to be sacrificed, the one who went through the test, was Isaac. But Muslims say, no, it wasn't him. It was the other one, his eldest son. Yeah, that's right. That's basically the situation. He's also called Ishmael. So you can see from this that both sides honor Abraham, and both really consider their own ancestor to be the son who was offered as a sacrifice back then. All right, so that's the history in the past. Now let's talk about the present. In 1948, Israel was established as a nation in the Middle East. They returned from Europe to the Middle East, and after the founding of Israel, they immediately came into conflict with the Arab countries. In the 1967 war, Israel occupied a large amount of Palestinian land. In the same year, the Arab countries, at the Khartoum Conference in Sudan, confirmed the three no's policy. It was called no peace, no recognition, and no negotiations. Basically, they were completely at odds with Israel. This three no's policy established the principle of land for peace, meaning Israel had to withdraw from the Palestinian territories that occupied, otherwise there would be no peace and the conflict would be endless. But for Israel, if they gave up the land, they would lose their buffer zone and immediately face the risk of national destruction. It became a zero-sum game. Either you win or I win. That's the situation, with both sides locked in opposition. There were two outcomes. One was total hostility, which is why later the Arabs started chanting the slogan, "From the river to the sea," meaning to drive the Israelis into the sea. This slogan reflected the irreconcilable conflict. Either you win or I win. The second outcome was that the Arab countries made the Palestinian territories the core precondition for any relationship between the Arab world and Israel. In other words, this also gave Palestinian leaders veto power over Arab-Israeli relations. That's also why it led to the situation where nothing could be resolved in the Israeli-Middle Eastern conflict. Several U.S. presidents, every single one of them, wanted to solve this issue. There was the Madrid Conference, the Oslo Accords, the Arab Peace Initiative, and so on and so forth, all kinds of efforts. None of the two-state solutions could be implemented because all of them had to respect one basic premise. The Palestinian issue had to be resolved first before Arab-Israeli relations could be normalized. But that just couldn't be solved, so the stalemate dragged on for over 50 years. It wasn't until Donald Trump became the 45th president of the United States, the previous president, that things changed. Trump saw the key to solving the problem. Why? Because of the rise of Iran's Shia theocratic regime. After Iran's rise, most Arab countries, which are Sunni, found themselves in a new situation. After the Sunni country Iraq was defeated, after the U.S. under George W. Bush invaded Iraq and Iraq lost the war, Iran became the dominant power in the Middle East. Of course, Iran already had the largest population, the most resources, and the biggest territory. On top of that, its military strength, bolstered by its theocratic regime, made it even more powerful. That's why Middle Eastern countries are so afraid of Iran dominating the region. This fear even surpasses their hostility toward Israel, but this is something they keep to themselves and never say out loud. Even to this day, they still don't dare to speak up about it. You can see that when Iran attacks other Middle Eastern countries, they don't even dare to talk back. So they're carrying this fear inside, but are too afraid to express it. And what about Israel? In order to survive, they've continuously strengthened their own military power, and as a result, they now have the most effective military and intelligence capabilities to counter Iran. The Arab countries are well aware of this, even if they don't say it out loud. So you can see an opportunity here. In the past, the two sides couldn't cooperate at all, but now there's a shift in mindset among the Arab countries. On one hand, a growing fear of Iran, and on the other, an increasing admiration for Israel's rising strength. These two factors came together to form a key solution that Trump was able to spot. Of course, it wasn't that simple for him to notice this. After all, people don't just come out and say these things directly. It takes deep conversations, getting to those unspoken understandings, and being sensitive enough to pick up on these subtleties to see the solution. Basically, the Arab countries fear Iran more than they fear Israel. They even developed a kind of admiration for Israel. If Israel were to stand up to Iran, could that actually turn a dangerous situation into a safe one for us? So that's how the Abraham Accords came about. On September 15, 2020, during Trump's first term, the agreement was signed on the South Lawn of the White House, facilitated by President Trump. At that time, the signatory countries were the leading ones, not the big brothers, but more like the little brothers. Saudi Arabia is the big brother, but they didn't sign, so they count as a little brother too. The UAE and Bahrain, as well as Morocco. Later it was the Sultan of Morocco, and what was it called? What was it? A country in Central Asia. I can't remember right now. Anyway, they all signed the agreement. In September 2020, according to the Jewish calendar, it was the month of Tishrei. What is Tishrei? In Jewish history, it's the time that commemorates Abraham offering his son Isaac as a sacrifice on Mount Moriah. So what does this mean? What does Trump mean by this? What Trump is saying is that the Israelites, you are the descendants of Isaac, the younger son, the descendants of Abraham's younger son. And the Arabs, well, they're the descendants of the older son, Ishmael. You are not mortal enemies with deep-seated hatred. Instead, you are half-brothers with the same father, Abraham. The two sons have been separated for 4,000 years, but now you can shake hands and reconcile. That's what it means. So at the signing ceremony, the UAE ambassador and the Israeli prime minister shook hands on the South Lawn of the White House. In a sense, this represents the reconciliation, after 4,000 years, between the descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Isaac. That's the idea. And besides reconciliation, aside from the symbolic meaning, President Trump also gave them a benefit. By making peace, this cold peace turns into a warm peace. What does that mean? It's not just limited to governments, where they simply stop fighting and lay down their arms. At the same time, people-to-people exchanges and cooperation are also encouraged. This is what we call civil exchanges and collaboration. So both sides exchange embassies and ambassadors and begin cooperating in a wide range of areas. With the United States facilitating this behind the scenes, it involves tourism, education, healthcare, trade, security, and so on. As a result, trade between Israel and other Middle Eastern countries grew by 74% in just 1 year after the agreement was signed, from 2021 to 2022. And in 2024, trade between Israel and the UAE increased as well. It rose to $3.2 billion US, an increase 140%. At the same time, in 2021, diplomatic visits from Israel to the UAE increased by 172%. Okay, so at the same time, as you saw in the news a few days ago, Israel sent its Iron Dome missile defense system and personnel to the UAE to help the UAE defend itself. So this Abraham Accords, in a sense, is seen as a kind of Copernican revolution in Middle Eastern geopolitics, a revolutionary shift. It means that the issue of who owns Palestinian land, whether Israel keeps it or returns it to Palestine, has been moved out of the center of the Arab-Israeli relationship. It's no longer the sun that everyone revolves around. Instead, shared interests, especially countering Iran and pursuing mutual prosperity, have become the new sun, the new center. So the Abraham Accords have reversed the traditional order, which was to normalize everything only after the Palestinian issue was resolved. Previously, the idea was to settle the Palestinian issue first. Normalizing Arab-Israeli relations was always something to be dealt with later, but now it's been completely reversed. So this reversal is truly creative. Trump accomplished what previous US presidents, who all wanted to bring peace to the Middle East, couldn't achieve. Of course, this wasn't without its challenges. There were at least two major challenges, one of them being October 7th, 2023. The reason Hamas attacked Israel and caused the massacre was precisely to sabotage the Abraham Accords. This was orchestrated by Iran behind the scenes, pushing Hamas to do it, because they saw, oh my God, if these Sunni countries keep making peace with Israel, what are we gonna do? Yeah, the whole point was to stir up tensions, which is why they launched such a brutal attack, to force the Palestinian issue back onto the table. After all, Hamas is a faction of Palestine, right? The second variable here is Saudi Arabia's stance. Saudi Arabia sees itself as the big brother in the Middle East, aside from Iran, so it views Palestine as a little brother. Of course, it feels the need to uphold justice, to defend Palestinian rights, to speak up for them, basically to back them up, and help Palestine restore its statehood. So Saudi Arabia remains the key player in the normalization of Arab-Israeli relations. So even though Saudi Arabia is currently very friendly with the United States, it still insists that if the path to Palestinian statehood doesn't materialize, then no agreement can be reached. They can't sign the Abraham Accords or join in. So, of course, the Gaza war is a major test, a huge test, and up to now, it clearly hasn't derailed the Abraham Accords. The second test is whether Saudi Arabia can join today, and that's the next big challenge. So that's what Trump tweeted this morning. What he meant was, Saudi Arabia, you should just join, and Qatar, you too. Join in and solve the second test. But then Trump immediately brings up a third test, saying, Iran, you might as well join too. Go ahead and join as well. So is this Trump's idea? Trump's idea, the Middle East test. The Gaza war is the first test. Whether Saudi Arabia agrees is the second test, and whether Iran will agree is the third big test. So what does the U.S. want to do? The U.S. wants to settle things in the Middle East and restore peace. They don't want the Middle East to be in chaos as they're trying to pull out. America wants to leave, to withdraw, and focus on dealing with China and Russia. But at the same time, they don't want their Middle Eastern allies to turn to China and Russia after they leave. Okay, so what the U.S. hopes is that these allies can integrate with each other and form a security alliance centered around Israel with the Arab Sunni countries as spokes radiating out, a coalition against Iran. Originally, up until this morning, they even considered letting Iran join in. So what's his offer to Iran? It's a huge incentive, ceasefire, lifting sanctions, and unfreezing assets, plus a vision of a united Middle East where everyone is family again. I'll be the big brother for you all. Once you get along, then I'll go deal with the people I need to handle. This is the unexpected move Trump pulled this morning, and it really is a bold move. I'm not exaggerating here. Whether it will work out is another story, but this is the bold move he made, and it carries a lot of weight today. He's basically forcing Saudi Arabia to agree, because he said it's mandatory. He said, I demand, I order you, I require you to agree. And then, after that, he wants to bring Iran into the mix. What do you all think? Will it work? Do you think it's possible? Let's do a quick poll. Do you think Trump's bold move will work? Could it actually turn Iran from an enemy into, well, really, this would be a classic case of turning swords into plowshares. With just one agreement, turning an enemy into a partner.